We're back with Team Rising. We've got Keneshia and Marissa with us today. Interesting piece in Politico tracking grassroots fundraising and finding in particular that Joe Biden started off strong and has really seen a massive taper off in the amount that he's been able to bring in online. So the number that they have is that more than 60% of Biden's online fundraising came in his first week. Ooh, that's pretty brutal. I mean, Keneshia, what do you think is going on there?
I think people are not excited about Joe Biden.
Yeah.
I think for me to give you my money, like my $5, I can't get my almond milk latte, I got to be excited about you.
Yeah.
And I think folks are not excited about it.
I think it's a mile wide and an inch deep.
Yeah.
And the issue is with him is that, again, remember 2016, crowd size doesn't matter. You know, like you got to look at the demographics. Right. You got to look at. I mean, listen, all the indicators are here. People don't particularly like him. They tolerate him, right?
Yeah.
So he's being floated right now by Wall Street cash and his bundlers. But I mean, you look at somebody like Bernie. Bernie's campaign sees an auto spike on one particular day because everybody signed up for auto monthly renewals. They're basically subscribing to Bernie. Now, like, as Marissa, as somebody who ran campaigns, that is so difficult to generate that level of support, to give you a monthly contribution. Yeah. That's hard.
Yes, and it's even harder, I will say, to not have customers, you know, come back to the platform and say, oh, I didn't mean to opt in, which is after 2 months where people start to see a big...
I mean, it's every month.
Yes.
Thousands and thousands of people are giving this man money once a month. It's like, I mean, 60% in the first week is a disaster.
Yeah, well, it's kind of like people were like, yes, Joe Biden, and then he started doing events and talking to like, oh, wait a second.
Yeah, I think it's also very interesting that we have Joe Biden making all this money the first week and then it tapering off, and the Biden folks like, oh, it's not a big deal, it's not a thing. But you all are also the folks who love Obama, right? And we remember that he had all these new donors, all these folks who were online donating for the first time.
Brought new people into the process who'd never been engaged before, who were out knocking on doors. He had a movement behind him.
Obama had the fusion between Wall Street and people who are actually excited. And Biden seems to have Wall Street and Silicon Valley. He has all the moneyed interests behind him. They obviously want to see him support. But I really think, I mean, this just goes, we're going to look back on this in 6 months and really just show like how brittle, Marissa, this candidacy really is. Like, this is not, this, like I said, it's a mile wide and an inch deep. And the moment that things just seem to be trending downward, we are set for an explosion of other candidates. I just don't think it can muddle his way to the nomination.
Yeah.
I mean, in general, Biden's had 2 big slip-ups. His performance for both debates were not favorable. He's had a couple controversial statements. So, you know, I'm still in. I still think that Biden will take the nomination because he's the favorite, because he raises high dollar, you know, types of money. But like we've all discussed, he's not necessarily really, you know, vibing with younger voters.
Yeah. I mean, the counterpoint would be that Trump is so motivating that we can nominate a toaster. Yes. And we are going to be all in for that frickin' toaster. Yeah. Right? That's the counter argument.
Yeah, I think that's the counter argument. I kind of want to hesitate to accept it fully because I want a Democratic candidate who's engaging. I think one of the interesting things in that piece was about, I think, Mayor Pete, who has that Obama kind of excitement, people giving him money. He's figuring out how to get folks excited about him. And so at this point, when Obama was running against Clinton, we were not sure about him. And so I'm waiting to see whether any of these candidates, particularly Buttigieg in the context of this conversation, is going to have that breakout moment.
But the question is, who is excited about him? And it's like, you know, New York Times did those maps we talked about on this show where you could see everybody's donor support. And if you zoom in on Manhattan, there's like the Buttigieg stronghold.
These are the people who donated to Beto, in my opinion.
Buttigieg.
It was like, I remember walking around the city during the Texas primary, and I was like, I've never seen more Beto stickers in my entire life, and I'm from Texas. There were more Beto signs in my DC neighborhood than the neighborhood I grew up in Texas, which I think is indicative. And that's where I think that Buttigieg's numbers really come from. I mean, he is the candidate of New York City. Well, he's the candidate of Silicon Valley.
But he's still only registering, what, less than 2% for name ID? I mean. So it's cool as he is. You go
look at these polls, and the guy, I mean, is clocking at 5%
We've got, this is a good time to put up our most recent poll, Hill Harris X, that has, you know, to the point about Mayor Pete, 4%, tied with Beto. And I mean, he's still kind of slipping in there as in the top tier of candidates, but he's fallen off quite a bit too. We've still got, but here's, Biden's still in the lead. There's that mile wide and inch deep.
Yeah.
Sanders in second, Warren in third. Those two are kind of, neck and neck at this point. But Mayor Pete doesn't seem to be growing his support at this point.
Yeah, he doesn't seem to be growing as maybe much as the funding would suggest, but I think that one of the things we talked about earlier was the folks who support Biden and many of them maybe being less educated or having less income. And I think that's right now just a function of name recognition and ID. And I'd be interested to see how this whole thing evolves once we get some of these primaries going and once people have a better sense of like who the people will be. Once we get this next debate that's going to have a smaller field and people can think about who they want to support more deeply than they have had to before.
That's a good point.
Ad nauseum here, but Bernie is the #1 second choice for people who vote for Joe Biden. It's not about ideology. I would point out in the last segment we talked about the Pew Research poll. Ideology is only 6% of what people are looking for. These are Democratic voters are not ideological. That's not the way that people vote. That's why Warren and Bernie don't have much particular overlap here. But I would just say, I mean, if you look at the strength of these coalitions, Joe Biden is brittle. We can see from the grassroots. Elizabeth Warren and Bernie Sanders both seem to be the best poised. They both have strong amounts of support, but they also have, and in Bernie's case in particular, very, very diverse number of people who are all very excited, particularly about him. And Elizabeth Warren has the most to gain from a Buttigieg or Kamala Harris kind of dropout. I really do think it might come down to the two of them. I mean, it all depends on whether Biden can limp across the finish line.
That's a good way
I think
to put it.
that is the problem, though, is that imagine him going into the general election after all this.
God, he's skipping all these events too. It really is not at the, there's a Native American event that Warren and Sanders and a lot of other candidates are going to be at. There's a DNC event in California that 13 of the candidates are going to be at. He wasn't at an event over the weekend for Black millennial voters. Like, they're trying to hide this guy. That's not a good sign.
It's not a good sign, but they should, because when they don't, he says things that worry people.
Yeah.
And I think that's going to be a problem. And unfortunately, I worry that the only thing that's going to keep him out of the race is Barack Obama saying, hey, no, seriously, we need new blood. We need fresh ideas.
He won't do it.
He's not going to do that.
He's not
He's
going
not
to
going
do
to
that.
stab his friend in the back.
He's not going to stab his friend in the back, but let's be clear, he also did not endorse him.
No, I mean Obama knows better. He's one of the most talented politician of the age. There's no way that the man is watching TV and being like, yeah, this is
Great.
what we should
So
do.
excited.
Yeah.
I don't know. He's also the one who kind of picked Hillary Clinton, so questionable
true.
judgment there.
Yeah.
Ladies, thank you. This is great.
Thanks,
Thank
guys.
you.
Tomorrow on Rising, political polarization expert Zaid Jilani takes us through Joe Biden's rocky China policy history.
And we're going to have part 2 of my conversation with Sanders Senior Advisor Jeff Weaver. He shares a bunch of memories from over 30 years of working with Bernie Sanders. Very interesting conversation. Have a great day. We'll see you tomorrow.
See you tomorrow.